Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Mythos Busters, where here we spell love L-O-L-A-L-O-La.
V.
I was really hoping to get an audible groan there, but we'll settle for that. Tonight I've got with me Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going.
Going? Just going? Just on a nice, lazy
Well,
Sunday
you know,
evening?
I'm a little... It takes me aback that you say we spell love L-O-L-A, because I don't think you love Lola, you know. You kind of seem like you're a little anti-Lola lately.
No. We'll get there. I have question as to her power level, but I don't disagree that she's really fun and likable.
Oh, okay.
See, for me, since I'm not a power gamer, those two aren't inexorably entangled.
Sure. I see.
But someone with whom I am inexorably entangled. We've got Ian tonight with us as well.
Oh, hello there.
And how are things your way, Ian?
Pretty good overall.
Good. So you'll notice a conspicuous absence of Scott tonight. He should be joining shortly, so we'll look forward to that. But for right now, tonight's episode is going to be a pretty fun one, I think. We've got our news and our community highlights, and tonight we are talking, as you may have surmised, all things Lola. So our discussion topic tonight, you know, I feel like a lot of people just look at Lola and they see all the potential, but they don't know how to get there. And I say a lot of people, I really mean me. So we're going to talk about Lola tonight and what you think about how you play her and how she's different from everyone we've come to be familiar with thus far. And then, of course, we'll close it out with a little bit of tentacle time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, guys, before we get started, any noteworthy plays lately? What decks, what campaigns, what you been playing?
My wife and I have been doing a 2-player campaign through my custom stuff as my playtest, my face check. And our 2-player is, she's playing William Yorick and I'm playing Roland. And I gotta say, that's a power couple, man. Those two together, like Seeker-y Roland and Guardian-y William, are phenomenal.
I can concur. My sister and her boyfriend and I are playing through the only one my sister's playing Akachi, but then beyond that we've got Roland and Yorick. And you know I mentioned this in the Discord, but Yorick is intensely better than I expected he would be, and I expected he would be really good.
Yeah,
dude is a machine.
The fact that now whenever we need to discard something, or not like that, but when like we're looking at building a deck and my wife is like, should I put Knife in there? And I'm like, yes, you should. Because it's phenomenal in William. And then
I know,
also...
and my sister was like, hey, you know what? This Book of Shadows looks pretty good. Akachi likes charges. I'm like, damn you, Matt Newman!
I know, it's great. It's really nice. Like I said, the fact that William can take Guardian and then you throw all the team-based Guardian cards in him, like Teamwork, and that's pretty much the only one that I can think of right now. Oh, Stand Together. Those are great in doing him and Roland together. Then,
how about leadership? You getting much mileage out of leadership, or are you using it at all?
I'm still not huge on leadership. Like, I don't know. To me, it seems just like a weaker. God, why can't I think of it now? Either Guts or Unexpected Courage. Like, I'd rather have both of those because they're consistent and you can play them on yourself, need be. Sure. But yeah, otherwise, but like Teamwork in William is amazing because he can cycle that stuff back and then just shift it to another player if they need it. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh, God, yeah. And one that I didn't think about initially, but that just makes all sorts of sense. I know Doma just mentioned it here in the Discord chat, but God, Police Badge in Yorick is so good. Because it's a slot that's not very contentious for him. number one. Like maybe I tend to run like maybe one rabbit's foot in most survivors just because it doesn't ask a whole lot of you. But just the ability to recycle that, and I tend to run basically the entire rest of the deck really lean. Like just about everything in the deck is below 2 cost, 1 or 2 3s in there. So he tends to stack up resources. So you have those bomb turns where it's like, all right, well, I need to take another couple swings at this enemy. Police badge, it's dead. Hi, you're back, police badge. Why would you leave me? It was, yeah, it's great. Very, very positive on Yorick. Ian, how about you? Anything interesting?
I don't remember if I talked about it. I don't remember much of what I talked about last time, to be honest. But I also, the 2 campaigns I've run through Carcosa so far are Yorick solo, surprise, surprise. And I also had a lot of fun with him. And I like that investigator because he, in addition to just being powerful, I like the kind of investigators that just give you kind of a lot of decisions to make and a lot of like puzzly moments of, this is something I said in regards to Lord of the Rings, but it's true of this game too, is like, I think more than anything, I'm like a Captain Kirk player. So the moments I live for are being like up against the wall with like no way to win, and then you're just sitting there looking at your hand, looking at what's on the board and trying to figure out, is there any like sneaky way I can get myself out of the situation? And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember having kind of going up against that with Yorick, and there was some kind of interaction with like, okay, I'm going to move, trigger guard dog, that's going to go away, then fight the enemy, then bring back the guard dog. And it's like, stringing together these like 3 cards, which if you played in a different order, you would end up with you failing totally. So
right.
I don't know.
God. And like figuring out when to land the killing blow. Like I had one where I had my leather coat out and I was fighting an enemy that only dealt damage. So I'm like, all right. And I've got my shovel in hand. And there's this clue on this 4-shroud location. So I'm going to hit this dude once, pop the shovel to grab the clue, take the attack of opportunity, because I don't care, leather coat, whatever. Hit it again to kill it, and pull the shovel back out. It's like, so fun.
Yeah, definitely.
I am also, I'm still not completely sold on her power level, but I'm really liking Sefina Rousseau. She is a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
That giant hand at the beginning just, it makes me happy. I took her to, I can't remember if I mentioned this on the last episode, but we the local playgroup organized an epic multiplayer playthrough of Labyrinths of Lunacy. And
nice.
I took Safina as a standalone to that because I wanted to just really give her a go. And working with around, I think I did just my standard 19 because I'm not gutsy as Nick yet.
Well, I don't know about Safina, if that would be great or not.
Yeah. Anyway, so what ended up happening is, what did I bank underneath her? I banked Uncage the Soul. I banked a level 2 emergency quiche, level 2 blinding light, and I can't remember what my last one was. But just those 4 alone, like I played that level 2 emergency quiche like 3 separate times. It was awesome. So anyway, Safina's really fun too.
Oh yeah, she has some trouble like solo against Carcosa, but in multiplayer she can definitely get going really well.
I feel like Carcosa has some interesting places it hits you.
Yes.
Yeah, and she doesn't necessarily have the tools. And but she does. I think solo she can hit a stride. Not that I've been able to play with her that far yet, but when she gets those leveled up cards, especially like any willpower boosts, help her out a ton, because otherwise, like, her spells aren't as reliable against the stuff Carcosa throws at you.
Yeah, I found the Spirit Athame to be an amazing,
it's huge
first upgrade for her, because it gets her fight up to the point where she could be able to kill like a cultist or a rat. And then if she got her spells out and she's Rite of Seeking or something like that. Oh yeah, the other event I had under her was Drawn to the Flame, because of course Drawn to the Flame.
Yeah, I feel like I've played more Drawn to the Flame with Safina than any other investigator ever.
Agree.
Because you just copy it and it's like, okay, throw down like 4 Drawn to the Flames.
Yeah, so between Drawn to the Flame, Rite of Seeking, and now lockpicks, I feel like you can assemble a really solid Clouvery Safina after like one scenario.
Yeah, you just need to get through that first one.
Right, yeah. Lockpicks kind of changed the game for rogues. Like, I'm really excited for lockpicks, yeah.
Skids needed it badly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poor Skids. He needs more, but he needed that above.
Yeah. All he needs now is his own version of the Holy Rosary, and then he's set.
Oh, God, poor Skids. All right. So, Nick, what's going on in the community nowadays?
All right. So I have an article and a custom scenario that I'd like to talk about. The custom scenario is, unlike the previous ones that I covered, this one I actually haven't played, but it looked so beautiful, and it looked really well put together and big, like really big, that I wanted to highlight it for our community. So I went ahead and linked the page for it in our Discord, so the live listeners can check that out there. But this scenario is called Blood Spilled in Salem, and it was put together by Colin Towle. I'm going to say his last name is maybe Toll. Colin Toll.
Oh, I thought you were doing a play on, like, Colin Powell. I'm like, wait, are you giving him a pseudonym, or?
So this scenario has investigators going to Salem, and it has in it, from what I could tell just from reading a selection of the cards, it has a lot of what you would expect to see in the Salem environment. Like, in that environment, it deals with the whole idea of witch burnings in the past, and there's this weird sort of occult thing going on. And it's really cool. It starts off going to investigate a murder, obviously. That's where a lot of these stories start with. And then kind of snowballing from there. Has multiple encounter sets, so it's going to play kind of like Rougarou, where you start with one, and then eventually you move into the other one. There's, I think, 5 agendas and 3 or 4 acts, and there's a lot of locations. So, like I said, it's a big scenario. It's going to be one that you're going to spend some time setting up and playing, but it looks like a lot of fun, and this is the next on my list for custom scenarios to try once I am able to get those printed and hit the table. So, really excited to try this one.
Nice. And so sorry, did I miss? Is it set in the 1920s? Is it set in a different timeline? Is it kind of? Does it seem like it'd slot right into the Arkham Files IP, or is it kind of a branch?
It looks like it's set in the 1920s. I didn't read specifically like a date or anything like that, but it does look like it's meant to be played like alongside your Rougarou and your Carnival and that sort of thing. So,
awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then additionally, like I said, we have some new guest articles. I actually have 3 in the wings, and we just published the first one of those 3 today. This was another one. Returning writer Ian McAllister continues his Beyond the Veil series with Miskatonic Museum. And for those of you who don't remember, the Beyond the Veil series is Ian McAllister doing an in-depth look at each scenario in the Dunwich cycle. And now that we have all of Dunwich available, he's kind of hit back to those, and now he's continuing after he did the first 2. So now we got Miskatonic Museum. He looks at the narrative behind it, the new mechanics that are introduced in Miskatonic Museum, obviously with the hunting horror and that sort of thing, and then his own assessment on it and how his initial reactions were to it, how he feels about it in the grand scheme of the campaign, and it's definitely worth a read. So go check that out as well.
Does he posit that the best strategy is to evade the hunting horror as long as possible?
He does talk about the merit of evading it, and I would agree that that is a pretty solid strategy. But overall, when he talks about the hunting horror, he says that, well, I don't want to give it away because that's kind of like the end of the article. But he says he...
Fine, then I'll interrupt with my own point that I was trying to slide in there sideways. So... when we played Dunwich, or when we played Miskatonic Museum last time, with, like I said, my sister and her boyfriend, like, they were just like, kill, 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 and the whole time I'm sitting there going like, oh, I can't quarterback this, we are really gonna hurt when he shows up in the restricted section. And we did. We barely got out. So, lesson to all you kids out there, maybe quarterback a little bit. But, okay. Super aside here, but I think this is actually kind of fun to say. So the reason I'm like completely trying to get away from quarterbacking is apparently I made a big deal when we went through the core campaign and we did Midnight Masks. They tease me about it now because apparently I mentioned very very obviously that, oh, you guys, and just remember, resigning is an option. So just remember that, if we want, we can resign, and if you feel like resigning, then we can resign. It's on the agenda. You can resign. And that's a thing now, where whenever I get too quarterbacky, they just go like, "Oh, and can we resign here?" I'm like, "All right, I'll shut up."
You should just give them a set of cryptic clues to keep it in the spirit.
Or just write the hints or whatever you want to say on note cards, and then just occasionally just like drop them on the table and be like, "Oops, let me collect that very slowly while you read everything
so
on it."
Occasionally they'll be like, "Wait, what's this?"
It's just a bad sketch of them like dodging the hunting horror instead of fighting. Like a stick figure running away.
And they look up at me and I give them the old wide mouth wink. Anyway, yeah. So dodge that thing. It's good. Don't kill it all the time. All right, is that all we got for articles at the moment? I know you said you got a couple waiting in the wings, right? So people should pay attention to the website.
Correct. Yep. I will be posting those again once a week. So by the next time we record, I should have 2 more to talk about.
And don't forget, y'all, if you're joining this podcast possibly halfway into its current life, that anyone can submit an article. If you've got a topic you want to write about, we will publish it on our website. That's what Nick is doing. So if you've got a thing, send it to us. mythosbusterspod@gmail.com. I'm sure we had some news, Ian.
We did have some news. One bit of news was kind of surprising because it came out of nowhere as everyone was waiting for an actual Arkham Knights announcement. We got an announcement of organized play of a different kind. The article was called Invoke Thy Name, and this was announcing a organized play kit called Invocation Kits. And kind of the details of this is that game stores are able to order this, and they get the kit, which includes Daisy Walker alternate art cards, which answers the question of whether they were ever going to do all art cards for the investigators, which I think is pretty cool that they are.
We kind of assumed, at least when we talked about it, that the full bleed template just wouldn't work for Gators because there's just too much to put on there, but I've never been more happy to be wrong.
Yeah. They don't have like a really clear picture of it that I could see, but it looks like they were able to fit the text down there in the bottom right corner.
I'll be interested to see what the back of the card looks like if they changed that at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's where all the text is.
So that's also coming with, alternate art little mini carts to go along with that. And then you get a playmat as the final part. So the interesting thing, though, is as far as what they've said so far, there isn't an actual scenario to come with it. It's not Labyrinths of Lunacy or anything. Apparently it's just these, so the idea is for game stores to order these and organize some kind of, event around it. I imagine what it will probably look like is people showing up to their stores, grabbing the swag, and then deciding with each other what scenario they want to play. The one new wrinkle, though, that they did add is these new things called ultimatums, which are basically kind of alternative rules that you can introduce into the scenario you're playing or the campaign.
They're format limiters, and I'm so glad we have them. Lord of the Rings needs something like this so hard.
Sure. So this is kind of the way they pitch this, is this isn't for new players, because this makes the game harder. This is for people who are, they've already played Rougarou a billion times, right? So they want to play this with kind of a new wrinkle to it. You can see the exact ones if you go to the article, but as an example, they have the ultimatum of Dread, which is you don't skip the Mythos phase the very first round. Or the ultimatum of Finality, where basically it's kind of the permadeath mode that if you die in campaign, that's it. You don't get another. Instead of getting trauma, you're just gone. And probably
you get to roll a new character.
Yep, which I think is an interesting way to play it. It's kind of like some video games, RPGs will have that kind of thing, like where if you die, that's it.
OG Fire Emblem.
Yeah. So this is kind of the counterpart. The most interesting one that got the community a-buzzing was the Ultimatum of Chaos, because what this one does is you actually have to take all the cards of your collection that are eligible for whatever investigator you choose. So say that's Roland, that's all the level 0 Guardian and Seeker cards and neutrals, and then you just shuffle them together and pick 30 at random to be your deck. which is
Now,
insanity.
I feel like I interpreted this slightly differently from the rest of the community. The way I read this is that the experience cards get shuffled in there too. Like, nowhere in there does it say level 0 cards. So, like, to my mind, I'm like, oh, this could get interesting if you end up with like 60 experience in the deck.
Well,
Am I missing something
think
there?
because it says I was actually unclear about that too, but I think I do remember Matt Newman jumping in the Discord and saying level 0 specifically. But I imagine when we get the kits, we'll get the actual
He would
rules.
do that. God, man.
But if you're interested in trying it out now without having to do that craziness of shuffling stuff together, a user in Discord, a Mariner, I believe is how you say it, came up with kind of a beta version. It's not fully complete, but a kind of chaos deck builder. The URL is bullet, ridden, like you're writing something, RIDDEN, and then lich.com/chaos. We'll put the URL in the show notes, but basically you can go there, pick an investigator, and it'll create a chaos deck for you. So if you want to try it out, you can.
Yeah, and what's cool about this is that I know Matt popped in and talked about this a little bit in our Discord, was that this is not like a finite set of ultimatums. Like,
Yes.
groups are encouraged to come up with their own. They're encouraged to use possibly more than one if they feel like it. So the whole idea is that, you know, you just kind of mix and match, and it kind of encourages you to create your own homebrewed, you know, house rules, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Which is pretty
people
cool.
on Discord have been coming up with all kinds of ones. They're kind of custom ultimatums. So yeah.
Some of them less crazy than others, but
I was trying to kill people with an ultimatum of inebriation, which turns it into a drinking game.
I did.
Yeah, so that's going to be in December, which is around the same time as the Lord of the Rings organized play. So I guess everything kind of got pushed off to December this year, but that's fine. Some Christmas.
That's because they have L5R to worry about for Worlds. World just became a whole new event.
Yeah, we know who butters their bread. So the other piece of news, though, was the third, had to double check. The third Mythos pack in the Path to the Carcosa cycle was announced, which is called A Phantom of Truth. So after going to the Miskatonic Historical Society in Pack 1, and then the Asylum in Pack 2, Pack 3 actually takes us out of Arkham altogether across the ocean to Paris. So this one, there's not too many details about what the scenario is going to entail other than trying to track down the director of the King in Yellow. But there was one new weakness spoiled, which isn't a basic weakness. So this looks like something you'll probably get as part of the campaign called Lost Soul.
Oh my God, the art on this thing just makes me so uneasy. It's so good.
It is. You want to read this one, Sean, since you're a fan of the art?
Oh, why not? God. I can't stop looking at it. His hair's like coming apart. It's disintegrating. Okay. Lost Soul is a treachery weakness. It has madness and pact traits. Revelation, check your campaign log. That's one we haven't seen before. And then 2 separate bullets here. If you have more or equal doubt than your conviction, test Intellect X, where X is your willpower. If you fail, take 2 damage. If you have more conviction than doubt, test Willpower X, where X is your intellect. If you fail, take 2 damage. That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And it's so weird how, like, every investigator feels differently about it.
Yeah.
You're just like, hi. And so now we're starting to see a little bit, I think, how conviction and doubt, the 2 mechanics that were kind of hinted at in Carcosa, might start to actually have some gameplay implications.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, do we think that this is the extent of the conviction doubt effect that we'll see? Like, do you think it's going to be treachery stuff like this, or do you think it'll have actual narrative connotations in later packs?
I initially thought narrative, so I'd have to think that it's probably a little column A, column B.
Sure.
Because, I mean, kind of the thematic implication is how sure you are of what you're witnessing and experiencing, right?
Right.
And that's that's the core of the King in Yellow. So I have to imagine that it's going to do more than a few tests.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'll probably be a little both. I think it'd kind of be a letdown if there wasn't some kind of narrative impact to it. I guess it's just a question of how much. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more when we get to talk about Carcosa in full soon.
Right.
But yeah, I guess this is the way they framed it in the article is this is like the first time that we're going to start seeing the actual effect of the doubt and conviction mechanic.
Right.
So this is,
and I think I think it's satisfyingly deep enough into the campaign. I mean, 5 out of 8 scenarios feels like a good point to start seeing the effects of that, and probably by then you'd have a good amount built up in either doubt or conviction. So
yeah. So,
and it'll be interesting to see what that adds to the metagame. 'Cause, when the first time you play through any campaign, you're just kind of experiencing it and kind of gaming out the story a little bit more and not doing so much pre-planning. But on subsequent playthroughs, and you really want to start getting all Scott about it,
getting all Scott about it.
It's going to have some interesting implications, I think.
Well, and to me, Carcosa almost feels a little less metagamey than Dunwich did, simply because of how, I mean, I know we're not spoiling Carcosa, and I won't spoil it, but the way it manipulates the Chaos Bag, and the way that, like, this sort of thing comes into play, doubt and conviction, like, both of those aren't great. Like, depending on what's higher, doubt or conviction. And I would assume that every time it checks those, it's going to be similarly do X bad thing or Y bad thing. I wonder how metagamey you'll be able to take Carcosa by the time it's all said and done. I have a feeling it's not going to be that much.
You think it's going to be a little bit more chaotic in what it does?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's...
Based on the 2 scenarios so far.
I mean, if it's designed well, which I'm assuming it will be, and I think it will be, I don't think it'll be a matter of like, oh, this path is clearly better. And right. I think even Dunwich to an extent, like certain parts you could definitely metagame, but there are, even in that campaign, there were different pros and cons to the different like paths you took. Yeah. So I think it'll be even more so this time. Kind of personally, the way I counter any impulses towards metagaming I might have is I tend to role play a lot of these decisions, like, what would Lola do in this situation, or what would Mark choose? So because I know all of us and probably a lot of people who listen to the show play multiple campaigns. I don't think it's like an issue of like, oh, we can just totally metagame this because people are probably trying out like all the different paths.
Right. Well, and even in, like, Dunwich, one of the obvious things, like, as we were going through the Mythos packs on release, we all thought that the Necronomicon, that taking that would be ultimately a bad thing. And then as you proceed through the campaign, you hit this point where you're like, oh, shoot, if we don't literally have that in play, like, this is going to be a lot harder. And that's very interesting that it kind of flipped that on its head. Because with Dunwich, like I said, you take the Necronomicon, then you add that token to the bag, and you're like, ooh, I'm not going to do that on all my other campaigns. And then you hit Scenario 7, and you're like, I wish I would have done that on all my other campaigns.
Yeah.
Except every time you pull that damn thing, it's like, no!
Yeah.
I guess the metagaming that does happen, too, is, like, there isn't necessarily one right path, but there are better paths, depending on Investigator, yeah. As far as this Lost Soul, it looks like doubt is the better path for the seeker high intellect types, and conviction is the better path for mystics and high willpower, which makes sense, right? The seekers are kind of like the skeptics and really wanting to get to the heart of it, and the mystics are more just like taking the kind of supernatural stuff at face value. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of thematic sense.
So other than encounter cards, we did get a couple of tasty spoilers of some upgrades of some core set classics. The first one, which I have to give to Nick, of course, is the 45 automatic level 2.
Yes, 45 automatic level 2 asset for Guardians. It still costs 4. This time it provides a combat and agility icon as opposed to just agility. Still uses up a hand slot, is an item, weapon, firearm, uses 4 ammo, so all that's the same so far. However, its text is action, spend 1 ammo, fight. You get +2 combat for this attack. Now, that was where I stopped reading when I first looked at this card.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's okay. Like, because then I saw the plus, it still does +1 damage. Like, all right, so it's kind of better. I don't know if it's too experienced. And then, so after this attack deals +1 damage, ignore the retaliate keyword for this attack.
Mm-hmm.
Wow!
Yeah.
That's actually really good.
Doesn't that just make you wish that was the distinguishing feature of all ranged weapons now?
Yeah.
Well, technically, this isn't a ranged weapon. And I'm only bringing... I know, obviously, it's a gun. You shoot it at range. Like, I get that. But, remind me now, isn't there an enemy in Dunwich, the Avian Thrall, that targets ranged weapons, but we don't have a ranged weapon yet? Am I making this up? I thought I saw this discussion in Discord.
It gets -3 fight to spells, firearms, and ranged.
Right, and we haven't seen any ranged weapons yet in the game. So that's... But yes, you're right. Yeah, like, you would think that every gun would have that sort of... Especially the Springfield, you can't be engaged with them, I guess, so there's that. But yeah.
Well, when we get our eventual Lord of the Rings crossover and we get our Legolas, I think we're going to see where it all falls into place.
Sure. I like to see Legolas in Arkham. Just straight up Legolas.
Weirder things have happened in the Mythos.
I really like this one as being like a mid-range Guardian weapon, which Guardian didn't really have before, because they have, your basic weapons and then, like, bring out the big guns and kill everything weapons. And I think the investigators that actually like this the most aren't even the Guardians. Like, Skids will love this. I think this is really good for Lola, for sure, to, the ones that are sitting that don't have that 4 or 5 basic fight that can really use that +2. Alrighty.
All right,
So
what else
the
we
other
got?
one was another Corset staple upgraded, and I'll take this one because it's a rogue card. This is the upgraded Pickpocketing level 2. Cost 2 with 2 agility icons, talent and illicit trait. Fast keyword, which is key here. The reaction to after you evade an enemy, exhaust pickpocketing, draw 1 card, which is the same, or gain 1 resource, which is different. If you succeeded by 2 or more, do both instead.
Amazing.
I actually would be on board just for the fast keyword alone, but
that's exactly it. Like, I read that and I was like, that's worth 2 experience. And then I read the clause at the end and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah. Please, Matt, for rogues, let's develop the extra actions thing more than the succeed by 2 or more.
I was thinking about that, and what I thought was all we need is like a permanent asset, so like a level 3 rogue asset that is just like reaction after you succeed a test, spend an action to consider to have succeeded that test by 2 or more. And then you bridge the gap. Cool. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I don't know if, obviously I haven't, it was literally just a shower thought. Like, I haven't actually tried something like that. Sure. But that'd be kind of cool. Like something, because yeah, you're right. The extra action rogue, while cool on its face, doesn't have nearly as many tools as the 2 or more rogue does.
Yeah, and that would put Skids back on the map, because that's his thing.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Skids.
Poor Skids.
He's on the skids now.
So it does raise the question of whether, if this is the pack of upgrading Corset classics, if the other classes are going to get some Corset upgrades in this pack as well.
Give me a level 2 Scrying.
Scrying.
Yeah, I think Scrying would be a perfect pick for that.
Yeah.
Where, just dig a couple cards deeper, or have the ability to put a card underneath the deck or something. It wouldn't take much to make that card really good for a couple experience.
2 more charges.
Yeah.
Something.
2 experience, put it at 5 charges. Like, I'd be fine with that. I love scrying. Just keep it out longer.
Ooh, man. Or keep it the same, except that it's a fast action.
Oh!
All right, we'll see what happens. I don't want to pine any more than I already am.
And Seeker doesn't need any, so who cares? Just kidding.
What a great addition to Rogues, though.
Oh, hi there.
Oh, hi, Scott.
Well, hi, guys.
Wild Scott appeared.
It's super effective.
Were your ears burning earlier, by the way?
Oh, they did, yeah. And you know what? I take no offense because I metagame the shit out of this game.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Good.
Not the first
I pride
time.
myself on saying no shit that I wouldn't say to my friends' face.
Yeah, I think that's it for the news too. You popped in at a good time, Scott.
Sweet.
Just stunned into silence. And I suppose the only other thing I know, Ian, you don't have it listed here, because it's not technically an actual news item yet, but I feel like it bears mentioning really quickly is Arkham Knights, right?
Yeah. I just left it off because because I'm
You have every right to be
Arkham
bitter.
nuts.
Oh,
Next year.
Yeah.
We'll get you there.
maybe.
Maybe.
So Arkham Knights was unofficially announced via the FFG Facebook. They haven't, I guess, had the marketing resources to get an actual article out on the FFG website, but I have no idea. Does anyone know if tickets have sold out yet?
I don't know.
I kind of expected they would in pretty short order, but I don't know how short that is absent an actual announcement on the FFG website.
Did they sell out last
They've
year?
almost turned it more in... Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Because of the early release of the LCG, but
sure.
it kind of seemed like this year they're treating it almost more like a local event, because the FFG Center in Roseville is what puts it on. They're almost treating it more like one of...
Well, with 3 weeks
events.
notice, yeah.
yeah,
Jeez.
I mean...
So you mean that they're kind of treating it like it's the FFG Center's event and not FFG's event?
thus far, but
Okay.
we also do know that an article is incoming this following week, or maybe this week, depending on when you're listening to this episode. So, anyway, that's out there. If you can come. It's going to be awesome. We all got in, except for Ian. Sorry, Ian. Abandoned and alone again.
Wendy.
Next year, I'll just come back to Minnesota after Gen Con and just mess around for a
Just
month.
live here for a month.
I'll house you. All right, so that moves us on from the news, right? Scott, I know you came in hot and fast, but you got any rules updates for us this week?
You know, I was trying to think of one on the way home. The only one I can think of is with Safina, with Painted World. If you're going to use, what's it called, Uncage the Soul, play a spell for 3 less, you cannot use that to play a not spell card with Painted World, even though it's a spell. Because when you play the Painted World, it becomes as a copy. So if you want to play a backstab, you cannot use Painted World or Uncage the Soul to get backstab at 0, essentially.
Gotcha.
But you could use it
Who
for
was
something
trying
like
that shenaniganry?
So,
Because Painted
is a
World, yeah, because Painted World is a spell, that doesn't necessarily mean you can get around the.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because you play it as a copy, right? So Uncage the Soul, when you can play a spell from your hand that costs whatever, but you wouldn't be playing a spell because you play it as an exact copy of an event.
Right.
If that makes all sense. So, yeah, that's it.
Fair enough.
That's
a
my
good
coming in
distinction.
hot rules.
I feel like of the investigators we have so far, I feel like no investigator is going to garner more rules questions than Safina and possibly Yorick, but I'm still going to lean on the side of Safina.
Sure. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I think all the Carcosa investigators are making people have to really run the fine-tooth comb through the timing windows.
Yeah.
Now, I have the rules discussion channel on our Discord muted because I only generally pop in there when I have a question myself, but I assume it's pretty active nowadays.
Yeah, it's pretty active. I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite ones, actually.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you're going to be all Scott about it.
yeah, exactly. Power game the shit out of this.
All right. Well, I think that moves us into our main topic. Ian, you want to lead us in here?
Sure. So we were kind of discussing exactly what we wanted to talk about from Carcosa before we get to the actual, full Monty of spoilers for Carcosa. And we decided we'll talk about Lola, the investigator who's kind of the most complex, and people are figuring out how to exactly approach her. So we decided we'd do a whole episode dedicated to one investigator, Lola, actually. So the idea here is to just go through kind of all the possibilities for her, our experiences, and figure out if we can't come to some kind of grips with how we want to approach, building for her and playing her through the rest of the campaign and other campaigns in the future. So first off, we kind of wanted to look at what are our first impressions and how we, first started going about approaching Lola. So what have your experiences been so far with kind of the initial experience with her?
Her deck building is the first one where I often can't sit down and build a deck in one sitting. Like every other investigator, if I set aside half an hour, 40 minutes to really fine-tune a deck, I find I can sit down and really plan out everything, make icons equal for skill tests or whatever I want to do for balance. Wise, hers like, okay, I work for half an hour, I leave, I come back the next day, edit some more, and I'm like, man, this thing is still going to suck. Yeah.
I like her. I was super excited to try her when she was spoiled. And then the first thing I did when I got home with Carcosa was I built a Lola deck and a Safina deck, and I ran both of them true solo through the first scenario of Carcosa. Spoiler alert, I ran them both through multiple times because that first scenario is a doozy. And I really latched onto Lola. Safina really didn't jive with me, but I loved Lola's versatility. And then from there, I dismantled that deck and rebuilt it, and then dismantled that one and rebuilt it, and so on and so forth until I got the one that I'm currently playing through in 2 different campaigns, and I'm really enjoying her.
I think Lola initially really stood out to me as just being the kind of investigator that I'll probably like when it was first spoiled, because I like those kind of very tricky investigators. And then I kind of reached this point of like analysis paralysis almost. Like
yeah.
Usually the restrictions help so much to just guide your deck building, and this one was like, what exactly do I do? So then it's just been a process now of kind of throwing stuff together and seeing what sticks, and just being comfortable with the fact that it's gonna suck probably at first. But I think I found a couple possibilities, which we can talk about.
I think a big thing with Lola is just because you can do all the things doesn't mean you should do all the things.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was my biggest hurdle, because I was like, oh man, she'll be great solo, I can fight, I can investigate, evade, will, I'll be awesome, but man, skill cap is high.
Yeah, it's definitely super high, because I feel like you have to have a clear plan of what you want to do with her, like you're saying, Scott, like... Because I feel like my base level plan was just, okay, pick 3 classes to focus on, which I think is where a lot of people start. I guess that's a good place to start. What do you guys think are the best 3 classes for Lola?
No, guys, I have a better place to start.
Which is?
Yeah.
That's a pregnant
dramatic
pause.
Dramatic pause. Extended dramatic pause.
Her name was Lola, she was the actress. She scored the lead part in a play, and her mind began to fray. She woke to monsters and eldritch horrors, and while she searched around for clues, she still never missed a cue. But now the stranger posed a real threat to her home. She had the range she needed to stop him. She just switched her role on to Cosa, cryptic Carcosa, where the cloud waves they break ever closer. On to Cosa, dim lost Carcosa, strange moons and black stars await to be all ours at Carcosa. We'll find the king.
Well, guys, episode 24 was a good run. We made it almost a year. Yeah, that's sad to see us die right now, but, some things are just out of our control.
So I won't lie to you guys. Technology uberly failed me tonight. Did that even come through? I was holding my freaking cell phone up to the microphone.
It sounded like it.
It came through enough that I'm really excited to listen to it on the edited version.
It came through enough that I think we got the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but Nick,
for those who aren't listening live, you got to hear the actual version. I put 4 whole hours of work into editing that thing, guys.
I think Sean just volunteered to edit this episode.
Oh, it was just a file. It'll be fine.
I did the last one, so someone else can do it. Otherwise, I'm not putting it in.
Well, like Nick said,
just for being accommodating.
15 seconds of silence.
It'll just be crickets chirping.
So at the expense of what was actually supposed to happen, God. So normally I have a setting where I can blast through my input what I'm hearing. So I was just supposed to play that on my computer, and it was supposed to come through with beautiful digital clarity for you guys in the middle of Ian's intro. So you guys got a full 3 minutes into this discussion, farther than you were meant to.
I was gonna say you must have been waiting for a good place to throw it in there, because your segue into it wasn't as strong as some of your others. I can tell that you were waiting.
I was failed today. It's just further proof that I really need to reset this.
Well, Sean, now that you've dazzled
all the
us
way
with
back
your
to factory
brilliance,
settings with you, bitch.
Now that you've dazzled us with your brilliance of song making, maybe dazzle us with your brilliance of deck building.
No, because I've failed miserably at Lola thus far. Although I will say, and we'll get to this in a minute, because this is probably a late topic assertion, but I'll say it now because I'm going to lead there with my own experience. But I feel like Clover Lola is best Lola right now.
Agreed.
So you guys were leading in, and I do agree, Scott, that it's really tempting when you look at Lola and you look at this realm of possibilities that she has. It's very tempting to go, you know what? She's going to do everything. But, see, I actually have kind of come to hate the 3-3-3-3-3. Oh, wait, that's one too many things. The 3-3-3-3 stat line. Jenny can get away with it because she can pay her way out, but Lola struggles a little bit.
She's not as powerful as Jenny, I will agree with that. She's not as out of the gate powerful as Jenny. But I have... the issues that I've had with Lola have not been around her stat line, so I will disagree with you there.
Okay.
I would agree with Nick, actually. The stat line is not what does it for me. I think when you look at someone like Jenny, she can play all the cards in her deck at any time she wants. That's kind of a big thing.
Right, yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah, okay. So I feel like that's the biggest thing that maybe someone who's just looking at Lola and having never played her will miss. So that moment when I had a lucky in my hand and I had already switched my role and I hadn't thought ahead, that was the moment where I go oh, I'm not good enough for her yet.
Well, I guess I'm going to make it an even 2x2 and cement the Mythos Buster Civil War by saying I side with Sean that the 3-3-3-3 bothers me.
See, and I love that solid stat line. I love that consistency. And especially, I loved it when I saw it in Jenny. To me, that was amazing. I love it even more with Lola because, she's a neutral investigator. All of her stats are the same. And you want to power in those neutral skills. You want to have a lot of those. So you're looking at most of her tests, she's going to have a boost of 2 at least. At least optional, whether or not you actually use it. You're going to have that available if you're running a lot of those neutral skills, which you should be. So, yeah, all right, I guess the Civil War's on.
Well, I guess I should clarify the stat line itself doesn't bother me because obviously as a Jenny super fan, it's not an issue. But I guess it's the stat line paired with the fact that a lot of what you're gonna boost with her is between different classes, so you just really have to play that switching game. Basically, I feel like with Lola, you have to be on your A game. You can't sleepwalk through the scenarios for sure.
Oh, no. Yeah, you gotta, playing Lola is very different from playing, Roland or even Agnes. Like, Roland has some fiddly stuff, but really he's very straightforward. Agnes is a little fiddly, but she's really kind of like one note, like, do everything with will, and as long as you do that, you're fine. And Lola's very much like, she's got buttons, and she's got switches, and she's got a kill switch, and she's got everything. Like, you just have to know the order in which to do it.
Yeah, I found with Lola, I mean, Sean, I know you're disagreeing about the Agnes thing, but the thing with Agnes is...
that's fine. We're not talking about Agnes.
If something changes mid-turn, almost every other investigator can kind of compensate easily, whereas Lola, you have to, okay, what am I doing this turn? What tests am I taking? What am I committing to those tests? When do I have to switch my role? Do I have one of her special cards where I can switch a role to something else? Like, you have to plan it all out and be like, okay, if anything screws up, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Yeah, you really have to have your tactical thinking cap on and almost be thinking, like, okay, what if it goes wrong versus what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And then that's generally where
I think the thing you guys are hitting on is that with a lot of I mean, in general, you should be thinking ahead, but a lot of investigators, it's like, okay, what am I going to do this turn? Whereas with Lola, it's like, what am I doing this turn and next turn? Because I need to figure out when I'm switching the role, what role I'm going to use for next turn. Because you can't just...
Like, hell, I found even picking your starting role is a bit of a brain burner.
I don't think so. To me, it's whatever I have the most of in my opening hand. Like, that's straight up what it is.
Yeah. I've gone so far now, like, I have little coins for action counters that when I'm planning a complicated turn, I actually put cards underneath the action counters. Like, okay, on action 1, I'm going to be using these cards. And then I put a fast card in between or something else to mark, okay, here you change roles. Then under this action counter, you have these cards. Like, it's...
He's getting all Scott about it, guys.
Well, no, it's just... If I'm going to play 5 or 6 cards in a turn, if I'm that lucky, like, I actually have to lay them out and plan and be like, okay, can I actually do this with the cards I have, with the switching of role abilities that I have?
You have to storyboard your turn.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes, basically. And especially, like, all of a sudden you draw an Elder Sign or an improvisation, and all of a sudden you're like, oh boy, all right, back to the drawing board, boys. Let's see what we can do now.
Yeah, add Dark Horse into that mix, and it's just
my god, Dark Horse is a godsend for Lola. Like, my Dark Horse Lola build was leagues ahead of my other builds.
Yeah, that may have been one of the problems. I didn't dabble in Dark Horse, so maybe that's something I need to do.
No, I don't know. I don't know if I have the mental bandwidth for Lola and Dark Horse. Agnes Dark Horse taxed me enough.
Well, because I sing this song all the time, but, obviously with Lola, you want neutral skills and you want a lot of them. Like, in my opinion, you start your deck with 2 of every one of the neutral skills as your baseline and then cut from there. But really, you shouldn't cut many of them. The second, in my opinion, like, cardinal rule for Lola is watch your passive buffs. And Scott was kind enough to throw all of the passive buffs that Lola can take into our show notes, so we'll really be able to, like, hammer home which ones work for when and that sort of thing. But really, in my opinion, Dark Horse is the most powerful of all the passive buffs. So it seemed like an obvious choice to me, and I do not regret that choice.
And
it definitely has the most numbers on it.
Too...
Right.
One thing I found about Dark Horse too is, Nick, I don't know if you found the same thing with building the Dark Horse way. I didn't build my Lola deck designed to have Dark Horse, but when Dark Horse comes into my possession in my hand, I'm like, okay, how can I shift into a Dark Horse build? Like, get myself set up, then windmill or friendly suplex down Dark Horse, and now
so it's a manual transition horse.
Yeah.
A manual transition horse, yeah. Like, I don't count on it, but when it shows up, I'm like, okay, maybe it's 3 turns from now that I become a Dark Horse.
I think that's my biggest malfunction with Dark Horse, is I start to think of it as if it were a permanent, and it's not. And there are games where I don't find it, and it makes me sad because I've built everything else around it. So maybe that's just where I need to shift, is just kind of have it in there as a nice little...
2 XP Dark Horse, and it's permanent?
Yeah, I'd buy that for $1.
I think the part that scared me off of Dark Horse, which I'm definitely open to it. I'm not saying it's not a good choice, but sometimes I'm an emotional deck builder. And in this case, I had a couple games where I was getting absolutely screwed by Crisis of Identity. Like I'm talking like my whole Guardian setup of like 3 cards just wiped. Because sometimes you're not able to do like a defensive switch, because of that pre-planning. Like I need to be in Guardian next turn.
Sure.
To set up this, otherwise I'm screwed. And so I was just, both games I was getting the worst luck of Crisis of Identity, so I was in that mindset of like, how I need to be able to quickly like refill my board whenever I get wiped. So I guess I was thinking about it more from a kind of, let's get resources out so I can quickly like set up when I get wiped.
Well, I think you glossed over probably one of the more important varsity level plays for Lola. So why don't you guys talk, or maybe Ian start, a little bit more about that defensive role switch?
Sure. I mean, so there's always the possibility, because she gets 1 switch per turn, one question you always have to ask yourself is, am I going to use that switch to basically prepare for Crisis of Identity coming up? So, if I have a bunch of Guardian and Seeker cards, maybe I switch to like Rogue or Mystic. So if it comes up, then I lose nothing or not much at least.
Yeah, because I found myself definitely thinking about that constantly, because let's see, I'm looking at my board right now. I still have Midnight Masks set up. I have Field Work and Magnifying Glass out, and Lita and a Fire Axe. So right now I'm dealing with the Masked Hunter. I am sticking on Survivor, but if that, and that's the thing. Okay, so I stick on Survivor because I need to fight this thing. At the end of my turn, though, I really don't want to lose that Fire Axe in upkeep, so I might switch defensively to something else, and then switch back next turn so I can start Fire Axing away. And I feel like a lot of people might not get to that. It took me a while to realize, like, I need to constantly be thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that has happened to me is I've done it quite a bit, and then I kind of pulled back a little bit, because there are times when you actually get yourself in a bad situation by defensively switching, and then it's basically you're starting in a class that's not ideal for you next turn, and then so you're going to use your 1 switch to go to the class you really need, right? And then that's your switch, you're stuck. So yeah, it's the whole defensive switching decision making is a whole thing for sure.
Can we colloquially call the defensive switch a yes and? Because of the improv thing.
Sure.
Yes, I'm gonna do it.
Unlike a lot of the other investigators, though, there are those plays and there are those turns where Crisis of Identity actually helps you, where you pull Crisis of Identity, it doesn't discard anything from play, and then the card you discard switches you to a role that you actually needed. Like, it's once in a blue moon, but it's happened to me, and it feels so good, and I can honestly say that Crisis of Identity does not feel nearly as bad as a lot of the other signature weaknesses. So, to me, it's almost more like just a neutral card, like, you don't know whether or not it's going to be good or not. So
I had, during my Gathering playthrough, I had the other end of that spectrum. I had my Magnifying Glass, Hyper Awareness, and I want to say maybe it was Field Workout again. And I got an enemy, and I had an enemy already that I wasn't able to kill in that turn, so I defensively switched off of Survivor. And now I realize that I should have switched to something that I didn't even have on the board, but I ended up switching to Seeker.
Ugh.
Pulled Crisis of Identity, and it was like, oh god.
Well, and that's another thing to consider too, is that when you guys build your Lola decks, do you look at it and go, okay, Guardian will be my build, like my permanent, my asset setup, or like Seeker, like I'll go Seeker heavy on assets and I'll really be able to clover everything up? Or do you just do you consider that? Do you consider that your board will end up being all one class, or no?
I have kind of looked at it from the role perspective. Like in this build right now, pretty much all of my Survivor cards are enemy management, except for look what I found. And then all of my Seeker cards are obviously clue acquisition. So I'm like, all right, if it's a clue turn, then I'm going to switch to Seeker. If it's a fighty turn, I'm going to switch to Survivor.
Sure.
And then, I'll play down my Mystic cards when it feels good.
I feel like I
is
kind of
always-
took an opposite approach, which is I tried to include some of like cloovering and enemy management in as many classes as I could, with the thought that if I get stuck in a role, I still want to be able to do like the core things. I'm not saying it was successful, but that was kind of my goal. Was like, okay, I don't want to just have weapons in Guardian, because if my board gets wiped or I get stuck out of Guardian, then I have no way to kill enemies. So I the way I built it was trying to have like backup plans in place in each class, kind of.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was just looking at my build for Lola right now, and I see that I have 3 assets in each of her 3 classes. Generally, a total of about 5 cards per class is an asset. 2 copies of 2 of them and 1 copy of another one. And the idea is that I'll have, 2 to 3, maybe 4 assets in play, but never more than 2 of a single class. And obviously, if I end up discarding the ones that are of the 2 of that one class, then it hurts. But otherwise, I'm just out like a Holy Rosary, or I'm out my 1 Fire Axe that I had in play, or something like that. And I guess that's part of the reason. The only time that Crisis of Identity really, really felt like super shitty was when I end up discarding a neutral card, and then suddenly I'm stuck as neutral until my turn comes around. Like, that really sucks. But other than that, it hasn't been detrimental to my play.
Okay, so talking quickly then, we've talked a lot about kind of like what makes playing Lola different. What about building for Lola? So when you're looking at a potential candidate as a card as a potential candidate for a Lola deck, what makes it attractive for Lola versus what makes it not attractive, something you should stay away from?
Well, I think the easy answer there for attractive ones is static stat boosts. Something like Holy Rosary that just sits in play, you get +1 willpower, and it's a sanity sink. Like, that is a great Lola card.
Or how about your allies, like your Alyssas or your Dr. Milans that sit there? Like, the Dr. Milan is a little bit corner casey because you can't trigger his resource ability unless you're Seeker, but you still get the intellect boost, so I feel like he still fits in there.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually run Alyssa instead of Dr. Milan, because she does that same intellect boost. She has 1 better on sanity, and that's my only card in my Dark Horse set that's higher than 3 for cost, so...
Neutral is good.
Yes.
Anything that's neutral is good for sure. Fine clothes, skills.
Fine clothes didn't work for me in Gathering. It made getting Lita so much easier.
Yeah.
As an upgrade, charisma is super good. I mean, we always say it's good for everyone, but since she can access so many allies, it's good for Lola.
I feel like the first 6 XP you spend with Lola is just charisma copies 1 and 2.
Well,
all the allies.
And the other side of that coin is that I would go so far as to say that class-based skills you almost want to stay away from, or you want to limit how many you put in your deck. Like, my current build, I started with 2 copies of Defiance, 2 copies of Fearless, but you can bet that those are going to be the first cards out when I upgrade and get stuff that I think fits better in that setup. Because those class skills, the only thing they exist for is to commit to a skill. And if you get stuck as an off class and that's the only skill in your hand, it's going to feel really bad. So double up on those neutrals and get rid of those class skills.
Yeah, I've kind of made a soft rule for myself that basically I don't put in class skills. I found they get clogged up in my hand a little too often, and I'd rather just whatever neutral skill lines up with that class skill, I'll just put the neutral skill in.
I feel like the only one that's made it in for me was Deduction, and that's, again, because I think Clover Lola is best Lola at the moment. But I agree in general the class skills are a very, very, like, normally they ask a bit of you and they're somewhat more conditional, but in Lola it's doubly so, or triply so, I suppose.
The one I've used is Vicious Blow.
Sure.
I should say, which is important, is that I've mostly been playing solo Lola, so in that case you need to... So in that case, you need to kill things, and Guardian is probably the role I'm mostly going to be killing things anyway. So Vicious Blow will work. But yeah, in general, I think that's good advice.
Yeah, I think Vicious Blow and Deduction are the two skills I could see fitting in, and I would say only one or the other. Because I don't think you could build an efficient deck with both Vicious Blow and Deduction. You're asking too much of your skill. Yeah. And I think you're not.
And you're putting a lot of pressure on your ability to switch roles.
Yeah.
So one of the ways I approach this, so I don't know if this counts as general Lola advice, but something to think about is after my kind of initial failures against Carcosa, I was like, okay, I'm going to run this through Night of the Zealot, which I did solo all 3 scenarios. And I was thinking to myself, like, what's the point of playing Lola if I'm just going to do initially, like I did, just play her almost as like a dual or 3-class investigator? Because kind of how this game is set up, like all the classes kind of have access to a lot of the effects. They just do it in different ways. Right. So my thinking was like, well, what's the point of accessing the different classes unless she's able to turn that into some kind of benefit of doing something that no other investigator can do. So kind of what I thought was, okay, one thing that stretches across a lot of the classes is cards that let you succeed at a test without actually taking a test.
Yes.
And so one thing that Lola can do that no other investigator can do is access those cards from every class. So my build I call Don't Test Me, because the whole idea is to just use all these cards. So actually, instead of a lot of passive boosts as my allies, I have things like Art Student and Stray Cat. Working a Hunch is my events, Look What I Found, which obviously do tests, but I kind of count in that same category. So,
well, yeah, and it's the same category as you're not intending to succeed the test.
Exactly. So, it wasn't like stellar, but it was fairly successful. She got 3 of the cultists solo in Midnight Mask, and it would have been 4 easily if I didn't draw like 2 Night Gaunts and then 2 cultists and then 2 Doom on another cultist. So
yeah, and Ian, you're hitting exactly the reason I think Kluver Lola is strongest Lola right now, because when an investigator can take what it's Drawn to the Flame, Look What I Found, Working a Hunch, Gravedigger's Shovel. Yeah, there was one more important
Art Student.
Art Student,
yeah,
was
just
one I
all
used,
those
yeah.
ones, like you just maximize all this clue efficiency, and as long as you can keep the resources coming, it's really a thing. And I think the reason maybe you and I fell on the same place as this one, it gets around the fact that her stat line starts in kind of a mediocre spot, because you just don't have to worry about stats for those tests.
Yep, that was kind of my thinking. Yeah, so I think that's kind of there's probably a billion approaches, but the 2 main ones I see is like you either work around the stat line and try to succeed other ways, or you really maximize those passive boosts.
And I feel like we don't have corresponding stat skips for enemies. We have them for clues, we don't have them for managing enemies. You can't just...
Yeah, there's not too many. It's like Lantern. And Guard Dog for doing some direct
Agnes.
Damage and stuff.
But you can't play Agnes and Lola, it turns out. Okay, so then, I know we kind of already have covered it in a way by talking about cards that we think are really good, but, what do you think makes a trap card for Lola? I'll offer my best example as I was kind of building through this stuff was Scavenging. Yes. I love Scavenging. Great card, but I put Scavenging in there at the same time as Milan, and the first time I had them both out on the table, I was like, oh, no, that don't work. So have you guys had any similar experiences, or am I the only dumbass?
I don't know if it was just my experience with it, but I did have... I was running a version of Lola that had Rogue in it, and I tried out Stealth in Lola, and it just didn't seem to carry its weight. I kind of like where the card is, but at the same time, in this, at least the specific build that I was running with Lola, it was too... It didn't do what I needed it to do, which was help me get around enemies. Because then it turned out that I was with an enemy, but I wanted to stay at that location. And the problem is that at the end of your turn, if you're still there, the enemy engages you anyway. And then it's like, well, why didn't I just evade them like normal? You know what I mean? So that could just be my experience with it, but Stealth felt like one of those ones where I quickly got rid of it.
Yeah, that was an initial one for me too, where I'm like, oh hey, we can stealth without having to have a big, stat or we can evade essentially without having to have a big stat for agility. But at the same time, you're like, well, most of the time the big threatening enemies are hunters, so even if it's not going to mess up your kind of roll switching, then you're also still not actually avoiding the enemy that hard unless it happens to be one that doesn't have hunter. So,
well, and
I'm not quite sure if that's a comment on stealth itself, just being a bad card versus how well it works in Lola. But either way, I wasn't a fan.
I think one that I wouldn't say it's a trap because I still have it in my deck, but it's a trap in the sense you better be careful about timing is Guard Dog, the aforementioned Guard Dog, because it's easy to forget that you need to be able to actually trigger that. Yeah. So I have been stuck in cases like, oh, I'm Survivor. Let me go move and take this opportunity attack with Guard Dog. And oh, wait, I can't do that. So it's a tough one that you need to be able to really...
And I don't think,
maximize your rolls.
I don't think we ever explicitly confirmed what we're talking about. So just in case anyone's maybe not as big into the rules as we are, the reason we're talking about this is triggering Lola's ability that you cannot trigger cards that are not of your role. That includes reactions. So anything that's got your Milans, your Scavengings, your someone else help me out. Your Dr. Malisons, if you're going that route. All of those you already have to have that roll when the thing that you're reacting to occurs. So, for instance, you can't switch roles after you've drawn the encounter card, but before you decide you want to trigger Dr. Malison to draw a different encounter card. Like, that doesn't work, and that's why those cards get so iffy in Lola.
I think in general, just kind of reaction-based cards are tough to run in Lola. It makes that decision of what role do I need to switch to way more difficult. Even as far as, like, at first I was like, Ward of Protection. Every investigator can take Ward of Protection, 2 of, But then it's like, well, now do I save my roll switch for the very end just to go to Mystic? Just to switch back out of Mystic, just in case I draw a Treachery. It's like, well, you know what?
Yeah, well, you're doing a lot of maneuvering when at the end of the day you're like, okay, or I could just have good cards on the table, and if a problem presents itself, I address it with the cards I have on the table.
Yeah. The only reaction I have in my Lola deck is I have 1 copy of Fieldwork. I mean, I have the 2 art students, but they trigger as soon as they hit tables, so they don't really count. But yeah, that 1 copy of Fieldwork, like, that can be useful, but there's only 1 copy of it, so at the same time, if I don't see it, it's not a big deal. So.
Me too. Yeah, no, I agree. I have a copy of Fieldwork in there too, and there have been a couple turns where I'm just like, oh, nope, can't.
Right.
I just don't have the actions to get it to work for me, because I'm trying to get this clue, and then I got to switch roles, and it's just not going to work. But I don't know. It's definitely the biggest thing I consider when I look at a potential Lola card. So Scott, you assembled this beautiful list of cards that provide some kind of static boost for Lola. So I don't know how you want to run over these, but I feel like we need to at least acknowledge this.
Sure. So I'll post it in chat. But also let's just go by maybe through class, because I think that's kind of how I organized it, and I think you can look at a class and be like, is this the way I want to build Lola? Is this, like, you see what stats this class supports for Lola. And for those on our Discord, I plan every time a pack comes out, I'm just going to update this list, and I'm going to have a Google Doc, and I'll post it somewhere.
That's ambitious. Perhaps we should post it to the Mythos Busters website.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Perhaps. It was not that ambitious. Basically, like, when a pack comes out, I'm like, does anything give static boosts?
Add to the low list.
Add to list. Like, the low list. All right, Guardian. So 0 XP. You have, and so I'll explain this list a bit. So Bandolier, it gives you an extra hand slot. To me, that's a static boost, right? You don't have to trigger Bandolier to get an extra hand slot. So, same thing like in Seeker. I'm jumping a little bit ahead here. A Laboratory Assistant, your hand size is bigger, right? Like, it's just stuff like that I included. So Guardian, 0 XP, you got Bandolier and Beat Cop. At 1 to 3 XP, you have Beat Cop level 2, Brother Xavier level 1, and Police Badge level 2. So I like Bandolier a lot, because I find my Yeah, if I'm trying to be the fighty Lola, I find my hands get full really fast. Especially if I like have magnifying glasses or something else. Like I found Lola very difficult solo to build. Like it's spreading her too thin. So I think Bandolier is a little bit more if you're trying to do everything Lola, which I think is not great, but
see, well, and
logical.
Yeah, I still am pretty lukewarm on Bandolier, like as a card. Like I kind of like what it's doing, but at the same time, it's adding one more step to the whole getting around a two-handed card. Like if it were, and of course, obviously, if it were permanent, it'd be good, because obviously make any card permanent to be good. But the fact that I have to find Bandolier, and it's not one that I really want to put two of in the deck anyway, and like there's all these things around Bandolier to where I'm like, I don't know. Beat Cop, however, that +1 fight feels pretty good.
Yep. And if you are doing Guardian and you're using Guardian, like you are doing a fighty Lola, Beat Cop 2's reaction is great, and if you're fighting, you're probably going to be in Guardian class anyways. So
seems good.
Yeah.
I would say that I think the best of the Guardian passive bonuses, though, for Lola is Brother Xavier, simply because the majority of his text box is a passive bonus, and they're good ones. The +1 will, and then the soak damage for your teammates. So,
yeah, and also just 3 health and 3 sanity, even just for Lola, right? Like,
yeah, that's something we haven't talked about. But her starting sanity and health is low compared to other investigators, so it's something you need to think about when you're building.
Fine Clothes for that reason alone is a good card. Because you can always play it, and it's just pay a resource to soak 1 horror, 1 damage.
I feel like that piece of Fine Clothes just always gets overlooked.
Yeah, I always forget that those are
card.
there.
Yeah. It's slightly finer than a leather coat. Any more on Guardian? Should I move on to Seeker? Seeker it is. Alright, so we've got Dr. Milan Christopher, obviously giving the intellect boost. Laboratory Assistant draws you cards, but also just gets your hand size 2 bigger, which is surprisingly handy, no pun intended. And then you got Magnifying Glass, and then upgraded, you've got Magnifying Glass. Level 1.
I feel like Mag Glass is a really good pull.
Yes.
Oh.
It's cheap, it's fast, you just set it and forget it. And chances are, if you're in Clover mode, you're doing Seeker anyway, so...
And even if you're not, I mean, or like once you've set up the Magnifying Glass, its +1 is passive, right? So you could be in Survivor doing a really tough test, and you have look what I found just in case, but you're still getting the bonus from Mag Glass. So Milan is good, but only if you're going Super Seeker, I think. Like you're planning to be the clue hunter.
Yeah, that seems pretty solid.
Right. Survivor. So
yeah, explain that to me.
In this list.
Because Survivor.
Okay. So Dark Horse I put with a big asterisk because of what it asks of you, right? Like, yeah, it gives you a constant boost, but you also have to be at 0 resources. So I think you have to keep that in mind. It's not like a Magnifying Glass where it's just going to work when it works. You actually have to play around Dark Horse once you have it out. But it is like, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's something you really need to take into account if you're going to.
Well, I don't think the question is do I put Dark Horse in or not. It's do I build a Dark Horse Lola or do I try something else? Because Dark Horse is one that you construct the deck around it for the most part. And I know we talked earlier about how with Lola you can't really bank on it coming out, like because her deck is so big and she has 3 classes minimum in there. But at the same time, I still think that carries over to where if you're including Dark Horse, you're building around it. Like you're taking that into account from the word go. So
I surprisingly did not do that, and I still found Dark Horse effective.
I mean, because
it's a good card
not to play it.
So yeah, Well, that's the thing. That's what I said earlier. Like, I draw Dark Horse. I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait 3 turns to put this down because I'm not ready yet to go broke. But once you're ready to go broke, having a 4/4/4/4 stat line plus other static boosts from magnifying glass or something else, like now we're talking about an investigator that might be like 5/5/4/5.
It's
like,
pretty
You
good.
can improv it in for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can improv it in for free. So, like, if you want to get set up, say you've got 3 resources left and you still haven't played down your machete, you said it's presumably your guardian or whatever, you can play that down, improv into survivor, still get down. It's just, yeah. No, I do agree. Dark Horse is a good pull in Lola, for sure.
I gotta throw a Dark Horse into my build.
Lola's a very... Lola's a very, like, once you hit critical mass of static boosts, it's like, well, I think I win. Unless I draw.
Oh, so she's like
Anyways, yeah. So newspaper, I put a little asterisk on it because it's only when you have no clues. So it gives you a static boost with an asterisk.
I feel like newspaper is
put it on there.
better in general in solo.
Well, and not only that, but newspaper to me feels like a card you'd put in Lola if Lola isn't your clue gatherer. Like if you're building a monster Lola, you'd throw a newspaper or 2 in there.
For sure.
So.
And then we have Peter Sylvester, and then upgraded survivor Peter Sylvester 2. I think Peter Sylvester 2, we've harped on this, one of the best allies in the game, and he gives you 2 stat boosts. Like, though his horror soak doesn't work unless you're in survivor.
Well, the soak does, the healing doesn't.
Sorry, the healing.
Right, the reason you soak on him,
Yeah. So moving on to Rogue. So at 0 XP, you basically have Leo. And Leo, I put static boost because he gives you another action. Like that, if that isn't a static boost, that's amazing. I don't know what is. I find almost in every build I build, if I don't have Rogue in there, I still throw Leo in.
Just as a cheeky Leo.
2 cards. Because I'm willing to... Because honestly, I'm very willing to switch a role, put in Leo, and now I have 4 actions a turn. And I'm very unlikely to lose him. Plus he gives me 1 health, 1 sanity soak before he goes away. He's a strong ad, I think.
To most decks.
Yeah. He's Rogue's lucky.
And the fact that he's passive for Lola just means he's all the better, because it just adds to her flexibility even more.
Right.
Yeah. I personally didn't use Leo in my newest build because all the allies are designed to just die quickly, and I don't want to spend a lot on someone who's going to die quickly.
Yeah, I skipped him just because he's a cost 6 and a Dark Horse build. Like, yeah.
No, it helps you get there quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pro tips coming at you hard and fast. Rogue upgraded stuff. So Cat Burglar, Hired Muscle, Leo DeLuca obviously upgraded. Lots of allies here, and I threw.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
I threw.
Sean's
Door opening
vacuuming.
again. I wasn't fast enough to mute.
Jeez, I thought it was me. Adaptable, I threw in there, because it's a static boost in between scenarios.
Yeah, that counts.
And in an investigator that can take everything at level 0, adaptable's really good if you're playing through a scenario or through a campaign the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th time.
The upgrade here that I actually liked and included in a deck for their maybe not the first time, but 2nd or 3rd time maybe, was Hired Muscle. Because this is the All Men Must Die build, the Valor Morghulis build. It's super cheap. It's a passive boost to her fight, which is the one I really was focusing on because I'm going to get clues through other means than actually straight up investigating. And I'm not planning on Hired Muscle sticking around long enough to cost me a ton. And the soak is nice for her low stats.
Plus, if you're doing Dark Horse, yay! All right, moving on to Mystic. We've got Alyssa Graham, and we got Holy Rosary at 0. And then at an upgrade of 3, we do have Book of Shadows. Just because it, again, kind of like Bandolier, it gives you an additional arcane slot. It's a static boost. I'm not saying it's good.
It exists. I will agree that it exists. We can find common ground there.
This list doesn't say good or bad. This is present. But for all intents and purposes, Mystic only has level 0 cards.
And you know what? I have both of them. I have 2 copies of each in my Lola deck, and I love it.
Yeah, Holy Rosary is one for me that goes in almost every time. Alyssa, I'm still finding the balance because I had there's so many good allies, but the amulet slot or accessory slot,
right?
It's not really fought that hard.
I feel like Alyssa's way better in solo because that ability to sneak a look at the top card is more powerful when you can control the only card you're drawing. Ideally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and wow, God, I can't believe Mystic has so few. I suppose everything in Mystic just replaces willpower, and that's kind of the quote-unquote stat boost we get.
Yeah. Yeah, the stat boost is moving the test to a different stat. And then neutral, 0 XP, obviously, Fine Clothes, and then 1 through 5, you have Charisma and Relic Hunter, again, a static boost to number of slots. And I think Charisma is... Fine Clothes and Charisma are like the winners here.
So what's your best 3 allies? So say you get through scenario 1, you manage to get your 6 experience, you get your 2 charismas. What's your end game for your best 3 allies?
Solo or multiplayer?
Let's go both. Nick, you go with whichever one you want, and I'll answer the other one.
Okay. In multiplayer, I would say Leo, Brother Xavier, and I don't know, pick a third one from this list. Like any of the other ones would fit in nice with having those 2. Like Brother Xavier is huge because, like I said, he can soak for the team, not just for you. And Leo because an extra action is really good. Now, obviously, this wouldn't be in my Dark Horse build because they're both really expensive allies. But I think if you're just looking at allies, like which ones are good, those 2. I would say probably Peter Sylvester for number 3 then. Just because that double upgraded Peter Sylvester, because that double stat boost from him is really useful.
Scott,
I think I would go. I've mostly played her solo. I played a little bit 2-player, 2-handed stuff, but I think for the most part, I'd have the same for both because I think she fits. We were talking about the Clue person a little better. Peter Sylvester. Leo DeLuca, laboratory assistant. I think, obviously, Leo giving you the extra action. Peter Sylvester, once you get him upgraded, +1 to 2 good stats. And then the lab assistant passive of being able to hold 10 cards. Plus, when you play her, drawing the 2 cards. Plus, you can just soak stuff onto her because you don't care, for the most part, when she dies. I think those are my 3.
Ian, have I given you ample time to think?
Mine is tough because I'm taking a whole different approach. So I'm liking these cheap ones. Like Art Student is one I really like for Lola. I actually like Stray Cat because for solo, especially in Carcosa, there's some tricky ones that I just want to be able to evade without having to test it because I don't trust the 3 agility. But if I had 3 slots to work with, then I would probably dedicate 1 to Leo for sure to get that extra action, and then I'd probably use the other 2 as kind of toggling some of these disposable allies in and out.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go Leo for sure because, as we mentioned, just that extra action passive is amazing. In solo, Alyssa. Because, again, burying that card, if it's a really problematic one, totally worth the doom, especially if you're in the Witching Hour. And I'm going to cheat a little bit and go with Lita Chantler because she has been a rock star in this campaign.
Yeah, I forgot how good she was.
I didn't know
It's been a while since I played Zoa.
Assets there. That's something else.
Do I now have to hear this?
Get on it,
poor
Scott.
'Cause- No, screw you guys. Only player
Okay,
cards.
well, I think that's a pretty expansive look at Lita. I think she's definitely
Lola.
just by default. Did I say God? No, we looked at Lita too, though.
Yeah, deck
We
building
know
for
where your
Lita is a lot
loyalties are
harder.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, we really should get Lita as an investigator at some point. Though I suppose that makes one of the story resolutions for Night of the Zealot kind of.
Play the custom scenario that I talked about weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. Someone actually did that one.
Lemans of Belief. It is a solo-only Lita prelude to Night of the Zealot. So
Nice.
I'm gonna have to look a little bit closer at that one. I've become a fan of Lita. I'm very pro Lita. Anyway,
Yeah, I never really cared about her one way or another, and then playing through with Lola, I was like, wow, she's amazing. I'm seeing her for the first time.
yes, right. With fresh eyes. So yeah, Lola, I think just by default has the most room to grow because she's gonna have so many options as more level 0 cards come out, and like up to level 3, like she's gonna have most of the cards in the card pool available to her.
right.
Final thoughts. Let's kind of talk about where we think she fits on the hierarchy of power for investigators.
Solo
I'll
or
lead-
multiplayer.
Well, you can caveat both. As I mentioned several times, I think Clover Lola is good Lola. I think she's pretty strong. I think she's at least middle of the pack for Clovers if you build her that way for multiplayer. Solo, I feel like she's middle bottom of the pack, but I feel like, and this is where I was going originally, that with the growth in the card pool, there's gonna be some combos that come out that end up being really good for her, so she's only gonna go up. Nick, I know you're in strong opposition.
Yeah.
No, I'm really not that strongly opposed. My arguing pro Lola is simply because she's so damn fun to play. Like, I agree that her power, it's there, but the thing is, she has such a huge startup time. Like, that's really hard to get around, especially when you have investigators like Rex, who are good just from the go. Like, from turn 1, Rex is amazing. And that's really hard to compete with. So I would put Lola, like, what do we have? We have 16, 17, including Marie investigators. Lola, to me, if we had to number them all, which I don't think you can actually do, but if I were to do that, I would put her probably around that. She'd be like number 8 or 9 out of 16 or 17, so right about halfway. I think that unlike everyone else, like, she has the biggest potential to become amazing. I just don't think we have all the cards right now to really make her stand out on her own. Because like we talked about, we pretty much said you can do Clover or you can do Dark Horse, and that's really kind of it. You know what I mean? Like, what else really is there for Lola at this point? And I think that once we get down the road more with that card release, like you said, Sean, she's really going to come into her own.
Someone's going to figure out some really cool combo down the line.
I think right now, Solo, if I were to rank it out of 10, because it's easier than a scale of 16, which hurts my head, but I appreciate what you're doing, Nick. I think for Solo, I'd put her at about 4 out of 10, and for multiplayer, about a 5. Like, I just think she's kind of, along what you were saying, Sean, middle of the road, as far as power, multiplayer, and then just slightly below average for Solo. But completely, Nick, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Like, fun to the nth degree, because I love, in a way, I love analysis.
She's a
paralysis
thinker.
because of how much thought you need to put into it. Yeah, you know, it's not like just railroading someone with Agnes, where it's like, I do everything with willpower, I'm
Hey.
easy peasy, right? Like that kind of thing. But
No, I'll accept it.
She doesn't do anything with agility, that's for sure.
But when you get level 2
No,
level 2
God,
Pete
no.
out, I've evaded a few things.
Some rats.
yeah,
Yeah, for me, I'd put her the same thing, middle of the road. Judging by kind of the Night of the Zealot performance, you know, getting 3 to 4 cultists, she had a decent chance of winning in Devour Below before, you know, that scenario is still so swingy that she got slammed and lost, but easily could have gone a different way. And I enjoyed the fun aspect of, like, you know, my whole strategy was going to be to switch to Cunning Distraction and throw a turkey at them and then run by to the ritual site. And it would have worked out fine, except for getting swamped for enemies. But anyway, the point is, yeah, I think she's mid-range. I think if you're going for pure power, there's quite a few other investigators that just will blow her out of the water in solo. But she obviously has endless potential to grow in the future. Kind of the struggle I had with her is that the role restriction is more significant than I thought at first. Right. When you actually play, it is very restrictive. And so learning to maneuver around that is a thing. And because the thing is, Lola doesn't have a power like other investigators do. Her power is to switch those roles. So I think when I was able to find that build, focused on not testing, and basically it's almost like you have to figure out how to build your deck so you are giving her a power, leveraging that switch to do something that other investigators can't. And I think that will increase a lot more in the future, especially for solo. Multiplayer, I think she can already do a lot more than solo for sure. But
I love that even in Arkham, you built a Lord of the Rings deck. Test me for
Yep. Sounds about right.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's kind of a decent place for her right now, and I think we'll see kind of more possibilities in the future.
And I'm very willing to admit, maybe my power ranking is also based on my skill ranking.
Fully caveated there.
I think we're all in that boat,
I'm not good enough for the max play Lola.
Yeah, if I played 50 more games with her,
yeah,
it's going to go up, right, in refining deck and stuff. But from what I've played with so far, and this short amount of time we've had her, a month-ish since Gen Con, it's, middle of the road.
All right, well, that seems about as good as any. Okay, hang on, sorry, guys. There's a storm coming my way. Apparently there's hail coming. So, let's work to wrap this up before I lose power and this recording. Let's move on to Tentacle time. Woo! Scott, what's been keeping you busy?
Well, I recently went on vacation for a week and a half, visit family and stuff, so not a whole lot of time for gaming. Lots of Hearthstone, though. I tried to hit Legend, and I just got bogged down, and I gave up, kind of. But I'm going to try again, I think, in November. And then I also downloaded this super awesome mobile game called Full of Stars. It's this kind of choose-your-own-adventure problem-solving game. I would recommend it to everyone. It's called Full of Stars. I recommend to spend the whole $3 to get rid of ads. But yeah, it was super awesome. If you read Choose Your Own Adventures as a kid, it's very much like that. And fantastic story.
Excellent. Nick, how about you? I'm guessing Nick is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
muted?
Did you see? It cut out right there, so I apologize. I have, much like Sean will talk about with his only Tentacle Time bullet, I have jumped on the Destiny 2 bandwagon. Enjoying that a lot. I've gotten a little ways through the story, and I'm enjoying PvP quite a bit more, so that's where I'm kind of focusing my energy. Other than that, I am working on my own custom scenarios, especially now that some of my freelance work has kind of been finished. So I actually am waiting on a copy of Frozen Tracks from printerstudio.com, and hopefully that'll be here in time for my 30th birthday when I'm doing that 30 hours of gaming, so I can show that off. Also,
So bring Arkham is what you're saying.
Bring Arkham, yeah, bring some Arkham stuff. So, and in addition to that, I've also I'm pretty close to getting a finalized version of my second scenario done. I made some final changes today. I'm going to play test those hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow, and get that second scenario kind of wrapped up. Other than that, real quickly, I want to talk about the board game that was gifted to us at Gen Con previously, Fire of Eidolon. It was that Super Nintendo themed cooperative dungeon crawly game that I mentioned. I want to give just my real quick thoughts on it. It's a lot of fun. It wasn't what I expected right away. It's a lot more puzzly. There's very little in the way of random actions, and it's more about working with the other players to come up with the best method to go about getting the treasures and getting out of the dungeon. I haven't researched its retail price or anything like that, But I would say that if you like puzzly cooperative games and there's a place in your heart that's nostalgia-y for those like Super Nintendo days, I would definitely say check it out. It is worth it. I still haven't tried everything in the box. Like, there are scenarios that I haven't even done yet. I've pretty much only played the base game, but with various player counts and various heroes, because there's a lot there. But it's a lot of fun. Check it out, and I would say that it is definitely worth it. So, not without knowing what the price is off the top of my head.
Price point looks about $30 to $40.
Okay, yeah, I would say $30 feels pretty good, especially for the amount of product that's in that box, even though it is a relatively smaller box. So, yeah.
No, I remember watching you unpacking that, going like, "Damn, they fit a lot in there."
Yeah, and the fact that there's 10 different difficulty levels, and then there's 4 scenarios, and there's a lot in that. There's a lot of value in that. So, check it out.
Excellent. Ian, what's grabbing you?
Not too much. One thing was I kind of felt demoralized after Gen Con regarding Lord of the Rings, because how miserable that scenario's experience was for me, that I haven't played since then. So I finally got back and playing some Lord of the Rings again, which felt good. Not that particular scenario, but some other scenarios. So, it's always good to kind of remind yourself of why you like the game. So doing that, and then the only other thing was catching up and finally crossing a couple movies off my list that I've wanted to watch for a long time but haven't. One, which I don't remember if I mentioned last time or not when you were talking about Scott Pilgrim board game, but I finally watched the movie, or finally completed it, I should say. And then the other movie, which has been on my list, which I don't know why I never saw it, was Hot Fuzz. Because,
oh my God, Ian!
Yeah, because I'm actually a huge fan of both Shaun of the Dead and World's End, which are the other 2 movies in that kind of quote-unquote trilogy. So I don't know why I never got around to watching it, but I'm like, okay, I finally have to watch it. And not surprisingly loved it.
So
it gets better every time you see it.
So
every single time.
Real quick, of those 3, which is your favorite?
Ooh,
that's unfair. He's only seen Hot Fuzz once.
Yeah,
That's
Hot Fuzz.
You haven't even seen World's End.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true, but I think after watching it, even though I've only seen it once, I think I might actually pick Hot Fuzz. Oh. It was pretty damn
There's
good.
got to be some World's End guys out there. To me, World's End is my favorite. In my opinion, they just learned from each previous film. At least how to make a film for Nick, apparently, because no one else thinks that World's End is the best. But again, as I've said every time, it's the difference between a 9 and a 9.5.
Yeah, I would probably pick World's End as my second. Not that Shaun of the Dead isn't good, but that would probably be my third. World's End and Hot Fuzz are close,
yeah.
But
all right, well, yeah, no, I gave Ian shit, but I still have yet to see The World's End. Even though I've watched Hot Fuzz easily 15 times, I don't know what it is. It just takes so much more spiritual energy to sit down to watch a new movie for some reason.
It does. You really have to work yourself up
rather than to just turn it on in the background while you're playing something.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, that's about it for now.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Lord of the Rings. I probably would have forgotten to talk about that, because I, too, finally had enough time away, because I guess absence doth make the heart grow fonder.
Yeah. I'm actually enjoying that Noldor deck I played with you and finding a way to make it, work solo, so yeah.
It operated... The one we played Dol Guldur against?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that seemed pretty solid. We beat probably one of the hardest quests in the game up to this point. So I'm not gonna say anything different. I too have been playing a little bit of Lord of the Rings again, finally, because I don't know what it was. I just was angry after Gen Con.
You were
for some reason. Yeah. But anyway, I had enough time to cool off, and I started building some new decks. And I mean, one of the things that I really love about that game is just how much deck space there is to explore. I picked up. We've been playing an ongoing campaign with my friend Dave, and we picked it up and we looked at the timestamp on our deck files for Octagon. It had been over a year since we had last played because we got stopped up on the stupid. Ithilien when the what's it called, the Crossroads quest, because that one just makes me angry, and so we beat it, and So we kind of had some discussions on new cards and stuff and what we might add, and I got, like, while we were discussing that, I got a new idea for a whole new deck, because I'm like, oh, that wouldn't really fit in this deck. Oh, but I could make a whole new deck around this one idea. And he went out and looked at his eyes. There's literally no other deck on Rings DB that has that hero lineup. And it's like, how can that be possible? But there's so much room to explore in that game, and that's what I love about it. So I'm really glad to be playing that again. And props to Tom, or Pirate Brom, if you prefer, in our Discord. He kind of has a craftsman's edge to him, I guess. He has a laser engraver and has been making some custom tokens. In fact, he's given us a deluxe set of Arkham tokens that we'll be giving away at Arkham Nights that are really solid. But he made some resource tokens for Lord of the Rings, and I am absolutely smitten with them. Let me post a picture here in the Discord. But you know what? It's weird, but honestly, getting those in the mail prompted me to play Lord of the Rings more than anything else has in the past couple months. And that got the engine rolling, and I started playing decks, and I built an Eomer deck, and then I built a Hobbit deck to complement it and pin things in the staging area. Anyway, ended up being really cool. So yeah, Lord of the Rings, and then my friend Brian finally peer pressured me hard enough that I got into Destiny 2. Didn't play the first one, but the second one I'm pretty enjoying it. It's a very pretty game, and it's got enough trappings, I guess, of the old MMO cast that I've got enough things that I'm like, all right, I kind of understand how the treadmill here is, the grind is attractive. And, it's been fun. I don't play a whole lot by way of video games, so it's actually kind of remarkable that this game's actually kept me engaged as it has. So, yeah. Look forward to Arkham Knights. I think we'll probably get 1, maybe 2 more episodes in before Arkham Knights. So if anyone is coming, definitely hit us up. Come say hi. We have an Arkham Knights channel in our Discord, as you may have heard. So if you want to come coordinate, we'll be getting a Facebook event up for Tentic Ale Time 2. Ugh. So we last year. Oh god, those groans were delicious. Last year, we closed out Arkham Knights with kind of a post-mortem at Joe Sensors, which is a sports bar down the road, and ended up being really fun. We had that epic game of Escape from Aliens and Outer Space, and just kind of a fun wind down from the weekend, so we'll definitely be doing that again. So if you're coming to Arkham Knights, stay tuned for that. It will be on the Saturday night, but the specific details are yet to come.
Yeah, it might just be at Sean's place.
Well, I live I'm
Sean's
more than
garage.
willing to host. It's just a matter of getting people here. I'm not exactly down the road from the FFG center.
That's true. Then it'll be at Scott's hotel room.
Sean's renting a limo? What? Oh, yeah. The key in. Come on down. I only got that breakfast thing.
It's got that breakfast closet.
A room with chairs and tables.
And a coffee machine. And a basket of apples. That's the continental breakfast, I guess. Yeah, so I think that wraps us up for episode 24, and we will see you guys next time on Mythos Busters.